I want you to picture a scene. You are in Minneapolis. It is cold. It is that deep, quiet northern winter where the snow kind of muscles everything and, the air hurts your face.
Right.
Minneapolis is not El Paso. It is not San Diego. It is about as far from the southern border as you can possibly get while still being in the contiguous United States.
Yeah, geographically, you are closer to polar bears than you are to the Rio Grande.
Exactly. And yet, if you look at the streets of South Minneapolis right now, you would think you were in a conflict zone. I mean, you have convoys of federal vehicles,
Yeah.
you have chat points, you have flashing lights reflecting off the snowbanks. You have a surge of over 3,000 federal agents deployed to this one specific location.
And that visual and that specific image of a militarized force in a northern city, that's really the anomaly we have to start with. Because if you just look at the data, it makes absolutely no sense.
Let's look at the numbers for a second because they are just staggering. Minnesota has less than 2% of the undocumented population in the entire United States.
Less than 2%.
Less than 2%. So if you are looking for undocumented immigrants, purely from a numbers game, you go to California, you go to Texas, Florida, New York, New Jersey, Illinois.
Any of those places.
Yeah.
Even the Somali population in Minnesota, which, is often the focal point of certain political rhetoric, is largely documented. They arrived in the 90s. They're citizens.
They're second and third generation now?
At this point, yeah. So functionally, there is no crisis of undocumented migration in Minnesota relative to, almost anywhere else in the country.
So we have this massive disconnect. You have a deployment of force that honestly rivals a military operation, and it's centered in a place where the target, statistically speaking, barely exists.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the central question of this deep dive. Why here? Why now? If the goal is immigration enforcement, this is the most inefficient allocation of resources imaginable. It's like sending a snowplow to Miami.
Unless efficiency isn't the goal.
Okay, let's unpack that. Because usually when we talk about government waste or bad policy, we assume they are trying to do the job but failing. You're suggesting the job isn't what we think it is.
To understand what is happening in Minneapolis in 2026, you cannot look at it through the lens of policy. You can't. You can't look at it through the lens of law enforcement or border security. You have to look at it through the lens of professional wrestling.
Professional wrestling, okay. I've heard people call politics theater before, and honestly, it always feels a bit like a cliche, like, oh, they're all just actors. Is that what we're doing here? Just saying it's all fake.
No, and I'm glad you pushed back on that because theater implies, a script that everyone follows politely. What we are talking about is something much more specific and, frankly, much more cynical. We need to talk about Kayfabe.
Kayfabe. I've heard this term thrown around a bit in cultural commentary, but give us the strict definition.
So Kayfabe is an old carnival term that basically became the golden rule of pro wrestling. It refers to the unwritten rule that all participants, the wrestlers, the referees, the announcers, even the owners, they have to maintain the illusion that the staged events are real.
So pretending the punch really hurt.
Right.
Or that the feud between two guys is, legitimate hatred.
Exactly. But here is the crucial part, and this is where it applies to politics in a way that theater doesn't quite cover. It functions as an open secret. The audience knows it is staged. They know the winner is predetermined in a writer's room somewhere.
But they agree to suspend their disbelief.
Yes, they choose to buy in because they want the emotional payoff. They want the drama.
It's an active participation in the lie. The audience isn't being tricked. They are playing along.
Precisely. And in this economy, the objective is not truth, and the objective is not efficiency. The objective is heat. In wrestling, heat is the technical term for the ability to generate intense emotional reactions, animosity, excitement, anger that sells tickets. If we look at the source material we have today, specifically the analysis around what's being called the Kayfabe presidency, the argument is that immigration enforcement has become pure political theater designed to generate heat.
So let's go back to that statistic. Less than 2% of the undocumented population is in Minnesota. Under normal policy logic, sending 3,000 agents there is a failure. But under Kayfabe logic...
Under Kayfabe logic, it's actually perfect. Because you aren't chasing criminals, you're chasing an audience. You're chasing heat. And where do you get the most heat? Not by doing quiet administrative work in Texas.
Right. Everyone expects it.
Everyone expects immigration enforcement in Texas. It's boring. It's background noise.
Yeah. It's expected.
But if you want heat, you stage a massive, loud conflict in a liberal city that is culturally distinct from your base. You go to the snowy north. You create a visual clash.
It's about the backdrop.
It's the stage set. There is a concept we found in the research from Alex Hochuli called the interiorized border. The idea is that the border is no longer just a line on a map between two countries. The border is a traveling mechanism, can be brought inside the country.
Meaning, suddenly the border isn't a crossing at El Paso. The border is a school in St. Paul. Or a workplace in downtown Minneapolis.
Or a checkpoint on a snowy road in the suburbs. By bringing the border inside, the administration forces a confrontation. As Jason Miles put it in one of our sources, the incentive is to stage them louder and center yourself inside them. They are building a ring, essentially, in the middle of a community where they know they will get a reaction.
This feels like a very specific strategy. It's not just we want to catch people, it's we want to make sure everyone sees us catching people, and we want to make sure the people watching are really, really mad about it.
Precisely. And this brings us to the concept of the heel.
The bad guy.
The villain. In wrestling, the heel is the character who deliberately breaks the rules. They cheat. They insult the local sports team. They do whatever it takes to enrage the audience.
So the administration is playing the heel to the city of Minneapolis. They are walking into the arena and insulting the home crowd.
Yes. And this is a very sophisticated tactic known as the provocation loop. It works like this. The administration acts as the heel. They break norms, sending in thousands of agents, aggressive stops, militarized convoys in residential areas.
And this provokes a reaction.
It provokes a reaction from the city, from the liberals, from the activists.
Which we are seeing. I mean, protests, clashes in the streets, people yelling at agents.
Right. And that reaction validates the administration's narrative. They can point to the chaos they provoked and say, look at this chaos. This is why we need law and order.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You poke the bear roars, and then you say, see, bears are dangerous, we need more cages.
Exactly. But there's a nuance here that's really important, and it goes back to the history of wrestling. Because you might ask, why would the administration's supporters, the base, cheer for the bad guy? Why would you cheer for the heel?
Right. Usually you want the good guy to win.
In the 80s, you had Hulk Hogan. He was a rule follower. Eat your vitamins, say your prayers. He represented the system working as it should.
The classic hero.
But in the 90s, we had the Attitude Era. Think Stone Cold Steve Austin. The narrative shifted. The good guy was no longer the rule follower. The good guy was the anti-hero fighting a rigged system.
Oh, that's a powerful parallel. So if you believe the system is broken...
If you believe the system is broken, then the guy breaking the rules is the hero. This explains why the audience for this spectacle forgives the cruelty or the chaos. Because in their version of the story, the system is corrupt.
The city of Minneapolis, the liberal establishment.
And deep state. That is the rigged system.
Yeah.
And the administration creates chaos not because they are incompetent, but to prove they are fighting that system.
So breaking the rules isn't a bug. It's a feature.
Yeah.
It proves you aren't part of the corrupt establishment.
And justice, in this framework, isn't due process. It isn't court hearing. Justice is visual punishment. The audience demands imminent justice. They want to see the villain pay.
And who is the villain in this script?
In the narrative the administration is selling, the villain is the immigrant or the sanctuary city protecting them. The audience doesn't want a deportation hearing 6 months from now. That's boring. That's C-SPAN.
Yeah.
They want a federal convoy, flashing lights, and someone being put in cuffs on camera now. That is the payoff to the scene.
It creates this incredibly dangerous dynamic where the whole goal is just the spectacle of force. But here's where it gets really interesting and honestly really scary. We are talking about wrestling metaphors, which implies a level of control.
Right, choreography.
Staged fights, choreography, writers in a back room deciding who wins.
That's the assumption.
But when you actually look at the people on the ground, the actors in this play control is the last thing you see. We have some reporting here from Ken Klippenstein that paints a really disturbing picture of who is actually wearing the badges in Minneapolis right now. Because if this is a stage play, the actors are, well, they're go on a script.
This is what we're calling the powder keg section of our deep dive.
Yeah.
Because you can write a script in Washington, but the people executing it on the streets of Minneapolis are human beings with flaws, anxieties, and very, very little supervision.
So let's talk about this freshman class of IC.
Yeah.
What are the sources telling us?
It is not reassuring. Veteran agents, people who have been in IC for years, career law enforcement officers, are describing this new surge of recruits as, and I'm quoting here, idiots, sketchy, and ideologically motivated.
Sketchy is not a word you want to hear when describing a federal agent with a gun and qualified immunity.
No, not at all. The reporting goes into specific detail. We are hearing about new agents passing flasks around on stakeouts.
Wait, what? Drinking on the job.
Drinking on the job. Yes. And having weird tattoos that symbolize specific ideological beliefs rather than professional allegiance. These aren't just guys who needed a job. These are guys who signed up because they wanted to be part of a crusade.
And many of them are volunteers, right? They aren't the A-team.
Correct. Many are chasing overtime pay, or they are chasing the thrill of the deployment. They are treating it like an adventure tourism trip to a war zone. And that mindset is being reinforced by their leadership.
How so? What do you mean?
The threat briefings. Klippenstein reports that these agents are being briefed as if South Minneapolis is Baghdad in 2004. They are being told to expect retaliatory threats. They are being told the citizens are insurgents.
So you have a 19-year-old kid, maybe not well-trained, maybe a little hungover from the night before, who has been told that the grandmother walking her dog might be an Antifa super soldier trying to kill him.
Exactly. Paranoia is the operating system. And meanwhile, the leadership, the people who should be reining this in, are reportedly hiding in meetings. That's the word used. They are terrified of liability. They know these new recruits are a lawsuit waiting to happen, so instead of supervising them on the street, the veteran leadership is staying in the office, avoiding the problem.
So you have a leadership vacuum at the top.
And a surplus of adrenaline and paranoia at the bottom.
That is one half of the equation. That is Group A. But we also need to look at Group B, the protesters, because the landscape of activism has changed dramatically since the first Trump term.
It has. And this comes from a very interesting article in Compact by Alicia Neves, who was actually involved in the early rapid response networks.
Oh, wow. So she's an insider to this world. She's not criticizing from the right. She's critiquing from within the movement.
She is, and she draws a really sharp distinction between the old activism and the new. In Trump term 1, the focus was legal aid. It was lawyers, quiet documentation, bail funds. The goal was to help the immigrant navigate the legal system. It was boring, unglamorous work.
It happened in courtrooms, not on Instagram.
Right. And now, in Trump term 2, we have IC Watch.
The tactic has shifted from legal support to direct confrontation.
This is where we see the whistles.
The orange whistles. Vehicle obstruction. Chasing agents. The demographic is shifted too. It's less about immigration lawyers and more about, untrained urbanites, often white, college-educated, who are putting themselves in the center of the action. It's a harsh critique, but it fits the analysis. The criticism is that the activist becomes the star of the show. If you are blowing a whistle and blocking a federal vehicle with your Subaru, you are creating a scene. You are generating viral content.
Yeah.
But, and this is the key point, you aren't necessarily helping the immigrant in the back of that van. In fact, you might be making the situation infinitely more dangerous for them.
And for yourself.
Oh.
Because if you corner a paranoid armed agent, exactly. Neves mentions the Memphis model as a counterexample. In Memphis, you had a Democratic mayor, Paul Young, who decided not to fight the spectacle. He coordinated with DHS. He said, okay, if you're here, let's focus on actual violent criminals.
And the result?
Crime dropped 41%. Murders dropped 47%. There were no major street clashes, no viral moments, just boring, effective governance.
But Minneapolis isn't Memphis. In Minneapolis, we have the collision.
Yes, and this is the synthesis. You take Group A, the paranoid, flask-passing ideological agent who thinks he's in a war zone. You take Group B, the activist who thinks they are in an action movie using car caravans to trap federal vehicles.
And you put them on an icy street in South Minneapolis at night.
It is a statistical certainty of tragedy. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy of violence. The administration wants the heat. The protesters gives them the heat. And the result is that real people get hurt.
And real people have gotten hurt. This isn't hypothetical. We need to talk about the cases of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, because this is where the Kayfabe, the show, starts to warp our ability to even agree on what reality is.
This brings us to Section 3, the Rorschach test.
The ink blot test. You see what you want to see.
Or what you are conditioned to see. There is a concept called neo-Kayfabe. In the modern era, the audience doesn't just watch the show, they choose which parts of the show are real.
Let's look at the Renee Good incident. She was shot by an ICE agent in Minneapolis.
And immediately the forensic ambiguity of the event was weaponized. There were multiple camera angles, and depending on which angle you watched and which news feed you subscribed to, you saw two completely different realities.
So let's break that down. Narrative A, the right-wing frame.
In this reality, Renee Good was using her car as a weapon. She was part of a caravan that was obstructing officers. She was trying to run them over. The force was justified self-defense against a violent agitator.
Okay. Narrative B, the left-wing frame.
In this reality, she was fleeing a Gestapo force. She was terrified. The agents were aggressors. Resistance was justified self-defense against tyranny.
And the truth.
The compact article suggests the truth is, messy. She was part of a caravan blocking traffic. That is a fact. But the lethal response, using real bullets on a citizen in a car, is questioned even by other agents. But here's the tragedy. The nuance doesn't matter.
Because in the Kayfabe presidency, Renee Good isn't a person anymore.
She becomes a prop. This is the vanishing victim. She ceases to be a human being with a family and a history. She becomes a plot point. The right uses her to prove that liberals are violent anarchists. The left uses her to prove that the state is fascist.
And the audience cares about the plot point, not the human cost.
Not at all.
It's devastating. And then you have the case of Alex Preddy. This one seems harder for the narrative machine to digest.
Alex Preddy is a glitch in the matrix.
Walk us through what happened to him.
Alex Preddy was a concealed carry permit holder, a citizen. He was shot 8 or 9 times in the back by federal agents.
In the back. 8 or 9 times in the back.
And unlike Renee Good, who fit the activist profile, Preddy was a gun owner. He fits the demographic profile of the good guy in the conservative narrative.
How did the machine react? This must have been tricky.
This is where you see the cracks in the kayfabe. Klippenstein reports that even ICE agents, people inside the organization, were saying, fuck this. They were saying, the best we can do is shoot a guy in the back. They were disgusted.
But the show must go on, right? The administration couldn't just admit a mistake.
Oh, no. Steve Miller came out and tried to frame Preddy as a domestic terrorist. They tried to spin it. But it's a much harder sell. It reveals the blame playbook. No matter what happens, you must absolve your team and demonize the other. But when the victim looks like your team, the system stutters.
It shows the desperation of the narrative. They have to turn everyone into a villain to justify the violence. But there's another layer to this fog, isn't there? It's not just political spin. There is a weirdly spiritual element to how people are explaining this chaos.
Yes. And this is section 4, the fog of crisis. It's a whole other level of interpretation.
We've seen reports of evangelical and Pentecostal communities talking about demonic portals.
Right. A demonic portal has opened over Minneapolis.
It sounds like a movie script. It sounds, I don't know, medieval.
It does. But for many people, this is how they process the world. And we need to critique this carefully without mocking the faith itself, but analyzing the political utility of it. We call this social illiteracy.
Social illiteracy. Explain that.
When people cannot trace the complex causal chains, the policy decisions, the hiring of bad recruits, the specific protest tactics, the years of legislative failure, when they can't understand the mechanics of how we got here, they default to magic.
It's easier to blame a demon than to blame a hiring policy at the Department of Homeland Security.
100%.
The hiring policy is boring and complicated. A demon is simple.
Exactly. It absolves humans of responsibility. If it's a demonic portal, then we need to pray. We don't need to fix the overtime rules for ICE agents. We don't need to rethink sanctuary laws. We just need to pray against the demons.
And that leads to this idea of abstract prayer.
It's a comfort zone. You see this a lot in the Pray for the Nation rhetoric. It allows a person to support the leadership, the heel, who is causing the chaos, while vaguely wishing against the violence that leadership is intentionally provoking.
It's a way to have your cake and eat it too. You support the law and order president, but you feel bad about the shooting, so you pray for peace.
But as our source notes, peace is not a feeling. Peace is not just the absence of noise. Peace is the result of justice and accountability. True faith, the source argues, requires discerning eyes wide open. It requires seeing that the first shots, the state-sponsored violence, are just as sinful as the street unrest.
It requires seeing the heel for what he is, even if he's on your team.
Precisely.
So we've unpacked the kayfabe strategy. We've looked at the dangerous mix of sketchy agents and action hero protesters. We've seen how the media spins the tragedies and how the spiritual explanations fog the reality. The question is, how do we break the spell?
That is the hardest part. Because of the open secret.
The idea that the audience wants the lie.
Why does fact-checking fail? Why can't we just tell people, hey, Minnesota only has 2% of the undocumented population. This is a waste of money.
Because they don't care about the money.
They don't care about the stats. They want the ritual. They want the show. Breaking kayfabe is the ultimate sin in wrestling because it ruins the show for the community. If you stand up in the middle of a match and scream, "It's fake," the crowd doesn't thank you. They hate you.
You're ruining their fun.
You're ruining their fun. But the cost here isn't just a ruined evening. It isn't just a wasted ticket.
No.
No. And that is where we have to end. We have to strip away the wrestling metaphors for a moment.
Get real.
Real bullets, real bodies, real grief. The heat generated by this show burns actual people. Renee Good is dead. Alex Preddy is dead. These aren't avatars. They aren't NPCs in a video game. They were people.
So what is the takeaway for the listener, for the person listening to this who doesn't want to be a part of the show, who doesn't want to be complicit in the kayfabe?
The takeaway is eyes wide open. Don't be a mark.
A mark is the wrestling term for the guy who believes it's real. The sucker.
Right. Don't be the mark. Look for the causal chains. When you see a convoy in a snowy city that doesn't make sense, ask why. When you see a politician breaking norms to make you angry, recognize the tactic. Recognize that law and order creates chaos when it is used as a stage show.
And recognize that your anger, your heat, is the product they are selling. If you react exactly how they want you to react, you are funding the show.
Exactly. Don't give him your ticket money.
I think that's a powerful place to leave it. It's about reclaiming our own perception of reality. I want to leave the listener with one final, perhaps provocative thought. We've talked a lot about wrestling today. We've talked about the audience and the performers. But here's the thing. If politics has become pro wrestling and we are the audience, at what point do we realize that we are paying for the ticket with our own civil liberties?
That is the question.
Okay, let's stop for a second. I want to circle back to something we touched on in Section 2 about the freshman class of ICE, because I think the listener might be thinking, okay, but surely there are protocols. Surely there are standards.
You would hope so. You really would. But if we dig deeper into the Klippenstein report, it's not just about young guys being reckless. It's about a systematic breakdown.
Go on.
The report mentions that the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, is increasingly a no-show in the field in Minneapolis.
Wait, the FBI is sitting this out.
They don't want the bad press. They see what's happening. They see the sketchy recruits, the lack of clear leadership, the chaos, and the FBI, which is usually front and center for major operations, is stepping back. They're saying, this is not our problem.
That is huge. That tells you everything you need to know about the legitimacy of the operation. If the premier law enforcement agency in the country says, we're good, you guys handle this, that is a massive red flag.
It creates a vacuum, a huge vacuum. And that vacuum is filled by these temporary task forces, by guys chasing overtime, by the ideological recruits we talked about. And when you remove the professional guardrails like the FBI, like the veteran leadership who were hiding in meetings, you are left with a raw, unrefined force that is operating purely on adrenaline and paranoia.
And threat briefings.
Right. And you have to imagine the psychological state of these agents. They are being told they are coming for you. Retaliation is imminent. Day in, day out.
It's a pressure cooker.
An absolute pressure cooker. And then you introduce the whistles.
The orange whistles from the protesters.
Think about the sensory experience of that. You are a paranoid agent. It's dark, it's snowing, you're already on edge. And suddenly, all around you, you hear these shrill whistles. You see cars boxing you in.
It triggers a fight or flight response.
Exactly. And because they are armed, fight means shooting. The tragedy is that this is designed. I'm not saying the specific shooting is designed, but the conditions for the shooting are designed. By putting these specific people in this specific environment with this specific rhetoric, you are baking the cake of violence. You just need someone to light the candle.
And the protesters, according to the Compact article, are lighting that candle too.
They are. And this is the uncomfortable truth for the left.
Right.
The Compact article argues that the shift from rapid response to icy watch has lost the plot.
Because it centers the activists.
Right. If you are blocking a van, are you helping the person inside? Or are you creating a scene where you are the hero fighting the empire? The Memphis model we mentioned shows that there is another way. You can actually reduce harm by cooperating, by lowering the temperature.
But lowering the temperature doesn't get likes on Twitter.
And it doesn't get votes for the Heal administration. Both sides, in a weird way, are addicted to the heat. The administration needs the chaos to justify the crackdown. The activists need the crackdown to justify the resistance.
And caught in the middle
are the immigrants and the citizens like Alex Preddy and the families of the dead.
It's a symbiosis of chaos.
That's a perfect way to put it. A symbiosis of chaos.
Let's pivot to the interiorized border concept again, because I think this is something people really need to understand. It's not just a metaphor.
No, it's a spatial reality.
Yeah.
Alex Hochuli talks about this. When you move the border checks inside the country to airports, to bus stations, to highways in Minnesota, you are fundamentally changing the relationship between the state and the citizen.
Because everyone becomes a suspect.
Exactly. At the physical border, we accept a certain suspension of rights. You open your trunk, you show your passport. It's an accepted part of international travel. But when that logic moves to Minneapolis, when you can be stopped on your way to the grocery store,
It conditions the population.
it conditions us to accept that we are always under surveillance. We are always potential illegals until proven otherwise. It's a psychological shift, and it feeds the kayfabe. Because every checkpoint is a stage. Every stop is a potential scene for the show.
And if you object, if you say, hey, I have rights,
Then you are obstructing. You are part of the mob. You are a domestic terrorist.
the label is ready and waiting for you.
That's the trait.
This really connects back to the New York Kayfabe idea, the choice of reality. It's almost like we're living in two different movies that just happen to be filming on the same set.
Yes. And the director of the show, the administration, knows how to edit the footage. They know how to take the chaotic footage of a car blocking a van and cut it into a trailer for law and order.
And the other side cuts it into a trailer for the resistance.
And the truth, the boring, messy, tragic truth ends up on the cutting room floor. Every time.
I want to touch on the demonic portal thing one more time. It feels so medieval, but it's happening now in 2026.
It is. And we shouldn't mock it because it is a deeply held belief for millions of people. But we have to analyze its function.
Its political function.
Right. If you believe the chaos is caused by demons, you are essentially depoliticizing the event. You are taking it out of the realm of human decision-making.
It's not Stephen Miller's fault. It's Satan's fault.
And if it's Satan's fault, you can't vote him out. You can only pray. It disempowers the citizen. It turns them into a spectator in a cosmic war rather than an active participant in a democracy.
It induces passivity.
Abstract prayer is passive. Praying for peace without demanding justice is passive. It is a way of washing your hands of the blood.
Like Pontius Pilate.
A very apt biblical reference. The thinking Christian, as our source puts it, must reject that. They must look at the first shots. They must look at the state violence. Because if you only pray against the reaction and not the provocation, you are taking a side.
You are siding with the heel.
You are siding with the heel.
Wow. This has been heavy, but necessary. I think we've really peeled back the layers here. From the snowy streets to the wrestling ring to the spiritual warfare, it's all connected.
It is. And once you see the strings, once you see the kayfabe, you can't unsee it.
And that's the goal, right? To see the strings.
To see the strings. And to
To cut them.
cut them. I love that.
That's the only way to stop the show.
Well, I think we have given our listeners a lot to think about. This isn't just about Minnesota. It's about how we consume politics in the 21st century.
It's about whether we want to be citizens or audience members.
I choose citizen.
Thank you.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Thank you.
Stay curious and keep your eyes open.